Hello and welcome to the Society of West Coast Artists April Artist Demonstration. Society of West Coast Artists is a volunteer organization. We are made up only of volunteers, and it's volunteers that keep this organization going. So if you are not a member, please consider joining. We need members to support our activities. And we have a gallery in San Bruno. That's one of the benefits of becoming a member. You get to show your art here. And we have these demonstrations each month as well. So there are benefits for joining, and we encourage you to do so if you're not already. So for today's demonstration, we are pleased to have Kathleen Alexander, a watercolorist. And let me just give you a few words about Kathleen before we start. After graduating from San Francisco State University with a degree in biochemistry and working in that field for several years, Kathleen decided to focus on her passion for painting in watercolor. In the early 1990s, she studied with photorealist painter James Torlakson. She began teaching watercolor workshops in 2006 and participated in fine art festivals from 2006 to 2016. She is a signature member of Watercolor West, the Northwest Watercolor Society, and the National Watercolor Society. Kathleen will demonstrate some underpainting techniques she uses to create depth while keeping the flowers vibrant. So join me in welcoming Kathleen. Take it over.
Hey, thank you for watching and coming. So this is the project that I picked for today, and the reason I picked this particular flower is I think that, well, for me personally, I think, and for other people, pink and red flowers can be really difficult in watercolor, and I used to avoid them. So once I figured out how to get depth and color, things got better for me. When I first was painting things with red, I would use maybe permanent rose, alizarin crimson. I think those were maybe cadmium red. And the cadmium red made things muddy. The alizarin crimson made things dull. And the permanent rose it wasn't bright enough. So I remember I had done some pink or some red heliconia flowers, and a really good friend of mine who has since passed away, Terry Hill, we used to encourage each other. She said, I want to see your red flowers get better. You need to improve your reds. So I took that to heart, and so I will show you some of the things that I do to get better reds. You can see in this, I hope you can see in this flower that there are just some really deep reds around the stamen. There are pinks, like reflected lights that are more red-orange. So some of these are cool, some are warm, and I'll explain what I do. So here's something when I'm trying to figure out which colors to use. I know to get the deep darks in my shadows, I want to put down either Winsor violet, which is also called dioxazine violet, or a perylene violet. The perylene violet is the more maroon one. So I also tested out, if I laid these other reds and pinks on top of these colors, what do I get? So that I can compare that to my reference photo and try to come up with a plan on what colors I want to use in different places in the photo. So I'll just go through this quickly. I wrote down what I used. This is really helpful when you're painting yourself. And you can keep these color cards, keep this record. So when you go to paint this again, you don't have to do it again. You just, oh, this is what I can use for this combination. Okay, so I'll start with this one. This is something that I do that may be different from other watercolor artists. I put the shadows down first, and I layer the local color on top of it. So in this one, I've got the dioxazine violet for my test piece and for what I would do in my painting. I start darker, I drag it out, so I have a value range, and then I let it dry completely, then I glaze on top of it with these other colors. So on this one, I've got the dioxazine violet underpainting, then I put a magenta, and I don't use the tube magenta, I make my own out of quinacridone purple that I buy from Daniel Smith. Quinacridone purple plus permanent rose, that's the magenta I use. And the reason I use that rather than a tube magenta is that I found that the tube magenta pushed the other paints away. And I don't know if you've ever experienced that, but it's like it doesn't want to mix with the other colors, it just pushes. So I like my own mix. So back to this, I used my magenta, quinacridone pink, and bright rose. And the bright rose is similar to opera, but it's a color by Holbein. So, and that's this really intense shocking pink. So I was happy with that. I didn't do any more tests on the dioxazine violet. Coming down to this one, I did my underpainting shadow with perylene violet. And then I used anthracenoid red, which is a cool red. Then perylene red, which is this color right here, which is more of a warm red. And I'll show that to you without the underpainting. Then I used the magenta and then quinacridone pink, quinacridone rose. I wanted to try to approximate what I was seeing in my reference photo. So I'm going from the middle to this reflected light back out onto the edge of the petal. So this is when I was doing this test, I was looking at this area trying to figure out, okay, what should I use? Now coming down to the one down here, I used the perylene violet underpainting, anthracenoid red, and cool red, perylene red, quinacridone pink, quinacridone rose. So fewer colors than up in this one, but it gave me an idea. There was some area in my reference photo that I was aiming for, and those were the, it's like, no. So let me show you. This is my underpainting. So I didn't have time I wouldn't have time to do all of this and then do the local color for a demo. So I'll explain to you what I have happening here. I started with just a really light wash of quinacridone rose or permanent rose over the whole flower. And certain areas I may have put a little extra water. See, there's a value difference between here and here. And in my reference photo, you know, I was trying to get a little bit different. It looks like I might have put it in a little bit of another color in there, but I didn't want it to be pure white. And then my underpainting shadows, I wanted to start with the pink, because in my reference photo, there really isn't any pure white, or if there is, I didn't want to leave it pure white, because sometimes if you leave it pure white, it looks like you forgot to paint it, and I didn't want that in this pink flower.
And what was it you used for
Permanent rose. Permanent rose or quinacridone rose, same thing. Okay, so you can see I went really dark with the perylene violet in the center of the flower, so you can see I really wanted to get this dark. Then I switched out when I get into some of these areas where I see it leaning more towards a blue finished. So anyway, that's what's happening. And let me go over my paints. So I have the Paroline Violet, Windsor Violet or Dioxazine Violet. Then I've got Anthrochromic Red, that's my full red. I think this one, oh, this one is Paroline Red. It's a warm red. The Bright Rose from Holbein. This is Pyro Orange, not transparent Pyro Orange, but just Pyro Orange. It's that pumpkin color. This is Quinacridone Purple. This is Quinacridone Purple plus Permanent Rose. This would be my magenta color. This is Quinacridone Pink. And this is Permanent Rose. And then I've got a lighter wash, lighter value with Permanent Rose. And this one is a really light wash with Permanent Rose and Pyro Orange. So when I want it to have a little more of a peach color, I would use that mixture. I put masking fluid over all of this stamen pollen area. So hopefully I can get to the point where I peel this off and do some of this today. It has to be really dry around there when I peel this off, otherwise the paper will, I'll lose the, rip the paper. But I do have a hair dryer, so I may take a break and get that really dry because I'd like to show that to you. I use these sable brushes. These are Escoda Kolinsky sable brushes. I'm really happy I bought them a long time ago because I couldn't afford them now. And then I use this Winsor Newton Cotman 1/2 inch flat to clean my edges when I need to straighten something or lift. So there'll be places in this hibiscus flower where I've got these roughly places where I would use this flat brush to lift. Okay, so I'm gonna get a brush loaded with each color that I'm planning to use. So I'm gonna pick one petal and try to figure out where it starts and stops. See, I think I'll do this light pink petal first. And then I'll come back and put the shadow, local color in the shadow afterwards. So I'm gonna look.
That was terrible.
Let's see.
It speaks away from you.
Take a look at my reference photo. So I'm looking at this one right here. So I've got the underpainting in the shadows established here.
She paints brown.
Sorry, I just muted them.
And then, okay, so I'm gonna load a brush with the Quinacridone pink. And another one, let's see. I think I'll use the Paroline red, the warm red. And then I'm gonna get another one with a magenta mixture. Okay. So I have one brush with clear water. And I'm gonna bring it, I'm gonna wet just this petal. I'm not gonna wet the shadow underpainting, I'm just gonna bring this water up to it. This is gonna come all the way over here. I'm not going to get this wet where it's really dark. And the reason is I don't want this to wake up and be over here right now. Because it is dark enough that some of it might lift. I'm going to look at it sideways to see the sheen of the water. I missed a big swatch, a big spot right here. So it's hard to tell when you look at it straight on, so you always have to look at it sideways and see the sheen of the water. All right, So I'm gonna start with I'm looking up at this area. It looks like there's some of the bright rose in here too. I didn't make a brush with the bright rose. Throw that up real quick. I have all the paints ready to go.
So Kathleen, we have a question in chat. What colors did you use for the shadow parts?
The Caroline Violet is the maroon, like this color. And then I've also got Windsor Violet in some of the shadows that appear more on the blue side to me. So I'm gonna bring this. So I see a really bright red in the shadow. So I'm using the Caroline red. More of a fire engine, warm red. I'm gonna switch to, not that one. I'm gonna switch to the quinacridone pink. I can go right over the shadow for now. I don't have to be really careful with brush strokes when I'm doing this. See, it gets a little lighter over here in this corner. Need an empty brush, one that clear water never used. So I'm going to take some of the really light value of permanent rose. So right now it's all really uniform and flat, and I don't want that. But if I let it set up a little bit, I can start changing it. So down in the shadow, I see I'm gonna put some of the bright rose. I see some interesting colors. I want to get this really intense and maybe some of that red down in here. I think that's the bright rose brush I want. I want the quinacridone pink. And then I'm going to put some of the magenta mix down in here. Still quinacridone pink. So now I'm going to take a clear water brush. Need it to set up a little bit more so that I can make some blues. Make sure I have everything covered that I want covered. Flip it a little bit. So I have my clear water brush. I'm going to I'm blotting it on my towel. So I want to lift a little bit. I think I want a little of this pink pyro orange pink mix. So now I'm gonna try to lift a little bit in here. I see a section in here that's a lot lighter. Try some buttons. So I'm gonna take the back of the brush. I see some lines like veins or just like little, I guess you'd call them veins in the petal. I don't want these to be too even. They were like a little too evenly spaced. Did you see that in my reference photo? So that's why I made one a little shorter. This one's got a little curve to it. So I'm not loving how like weird pink this part is, so I'm gonna take some of it away. I'm gonna try just the quinacridone pink, and then I dipped into the light pyro orange mixture. Since it's so wet, I can just keep changing it till I'm satisfied. I do want to put in some blooms. The nice thing about hibiscus flowers is they have this texture and they can be wrinkly in the petals, so it's kind of fun to let blossoms happen. They aren't usually something that you want in your flowers, or you know, when you're trying to do something smooth, then you're really good at making blossoms, but sometimes they're. So I'm just tapping the water so that it'll make a blossom. This one right here. I think I want to pick up a little bit of this pink. A little clear water there. Because I want to keep that a light area. I'm just dropping some clear water. I'm trying to line my strokes up with the points. Here's these points so that it looks like there's a ruffle or a crease in the petal. So I'm happy with that one for the moment. I'm gonna move on to a different. Just a little bit. So now I'm going to pick one that's not touching. I think I will try this really ruffly section right here. So here's my Carolyn red brush. What else is in there? I think the quinacridone pink would be good, and some of the magenta. Must have been that one. So in this one, oops, oh, so take a look at this one. You can see how the water I dropped in is making some of those, the texture that I want. So happy with that. Okay. This one, I'm not going to wet this. I'm going to put in the bright warm red, highlight red. Okay, I'm not going to wet this edge right now because I don't want it to bleed into the whole rest of that section. So I think I'll do this in pieces. So there's my pyro red. Okay. quinacridone pink. And then I'm gonna leave some space, some white space, because I see some pieces on the edges that are a lot lighter. Let's see, I can do this one. Okay, I have the underpainting here. This is the pyro red in this triangle shape. Then it's going to switch to the magenta so that I can get that dark and join it with the shadow. So when this is dry, I'll show you, I'll soften these edges and then I can start putting in some of the other color. So what I find is if I can put the dark color in, then I can soften the edges and then any lighter values blend well with the dark softened edge. I hope that makes sense. Because there's so much pigment in these, it's really easy to soften the edges and get the blurry edge in them. Let's see, this isn't touching it. Okay, I'm going to do this piece. And that'll be very similar to this one. So I'm going to wet this. I'm just thinking, I'm wondering, do I want to put in the local color in this big shadow first, or do I want to? And I do want to put the shadow in. Because just what I said, if I put the local color in the shadow, then I can soften the edges and it will be easier to merge the lighter values. So, let's see. Okay, I'm going to use the hairdryer for a second so I think I'm going to start with the center and move out and do this whole shadow, dark shadow area. So I'm going to get this dry. So maybe you turn off the volume for a second if you want, or does anybody want to ask, or you can ask questions if there's yes.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm going to do this whole big shadow and bring it out into this shadow because they're all connected. So that's very much like what I did here in this practice. So I'm going to get a brush with anthracnoid red, which is my cool red. Oops, okay, so I'm going to do the shadow. I'm going to start here. I'm going to bring it all the way out to here. I have a brush with anthracnoid red, and then the next one will be my one red, parent red. And then I'm checking my list here. My magenta brush. So I think I'm going to line them up in order on my washcloth. So that will make my life easier. So I have them all loaded, and then I'll just be able to grab them as I go through the list. Then I'm going to switch to quinacridone. All right, so here we go. This is the fun part. I've been waiting to do this since I did the underpainting. All right, so I'm going to start over here. This is a cool red, anthracite red. So you can see it is really closely approximating the color you see in the reference photo. Anthracite red over Caroline violet. And then once this is dry, when I can soften these edges and put in the warm red. I like anthracite red a lot. It's much more vibrant than alizarin crimson.
Can you move your reference photo to the upper part of the flower? Yeah, right up there. Go a little lower. Yeah, right about there. It's good.
Right, so I'm gonna stop right here over this, because this is a different petal that I don't want to do right now. I want to continue down into this area. So I'm checking. I start to see a little bit of warmth in the red, so I'm going to take my Caroline red. That's really bright. Work on that. See, it's kind of like these ruffly shapes in the flower. That's what I'm trying to show by having this Caroline red on top of the anthracite red. And then here in my underpainting, I stopped having as much Caroline violet right here. This is where it starts to change to the warm red. See, it's got that really orange in the reference photo. It's got that orange kind of line, but I use my underpainting as a guide to know where to stop with the anthracite red. So I've got a really dark Caroline violet underpainting, or even the Windsor violet underpainting here. I know I've got to cover it with my cool anthracite red. All right, so right here, I'm going to switch to Caroline red. And this comes over here. I'm going to stopping point. Now I'm going to go, let's see which one. I think I'm going to use a magenta. That is right here. I'm so happy I lined the brushes up so I know where they are instead of checking with my hand. So I can see this is already drying. I didn't wet the paper here. Quickly. So I'm putting the magenta over this dark shadow. Bring it down here a tiny bit. Now I'm going to switch to Microdome pink. Comes right to the edge. Oh, let's see. I have to remember. Okay, here, this little triangle shape is my landmark, so I know I can see that the bright Caroline red comes over here. Joins up here. I will put, so I have to decide, do I want to put anthraquinone red over this or the magenta? And I think it would be more, have more continuity of the magenta. Where's that? Okay. So I don't like how this is bled into here. This is supposed to be one nice sweeping shape. So here's my Caroline red, or red, whichever one it was. Okay. So now I don't want to hard line here either. So I'm gonna take Macadam rose. I'm gonna wake that back up. I'm just trying to get that. That's fine. Okay. And then take this, rinsed it out, and then switch to clear water here. Okay, right now I need more of a magenta in that. I need to do this before it all starts to dry. And I'll take this Macadam pink here. Down here. Down here. What's going on with that? Oh, this red is supposed to come down farther. So some of these I can soften after it dries and add the pinks. And I think I'll do that because I don't want that red to swim out too far. Right. Now I want to start putting in a little bit of the texture in here. So I'm just dropping in some clear water. And some light in here. I'm just taking my clear water brush and lifting a little. So I've got this section down here that I didn't do anything to. I think I see some of the, well, I'm gonna put some anthraquinone red because I want it to be darker. And maybe I'll put some of the Caroline red on top of it. The reason I didn't do this triangle is I knew I could come back to that and it won't matter. This joining together a bit. Yeah, I need to get some light back into the edges, so I'm going to drop some clear water. And this was the one that was going to come back and paint. I want to do some of these things where I take the back brush, make some lines. Do this, the paint kind of falls into the groove. So get a little bit of light back in here, and then I can fill this in. I think Macadam pink will be good. And then this one, I was going to come back and soften. I think it's setting up enough now that I can do that. So I'm going to use that Catalyst by Princeton brush. And if you like to soften edges with your paint, when you're doing watercolors, you will really like these. I used to use those brushes they sell, the scrubbing brushes, and they would just lift the paint or the paper up. They were awful. But this is great. Okay, so let's see, I need to check my work. So I've got that dark, I mean, this bright. This could be darker right here, so find my anthraquinone red brush. Yeah. I think, yeah, I was thinking, do I need to dip back into the carmine violet? Yeah, well. Put a little bit of that carmine violet back in here. But I think it will show up later. This is good enough. Let's see. The water brush. Want a bit of that blossoming. So I can just tap. And that'll push the paint back up into that area. I'm gonna go dry this. Well, you know what? Before I dry, I don't like how the Windsor Violet underpainting is showing up here so much. So I'm gonna see if I can put some of the magenta on the top of it. There's kind of a big puddle there. If I just drop it, I want to hide it without making too big of a balloon. I just dried off the brush a little. Now it's looking real blue. So let me see if I can get some thin pink. That's better. And then we'll clean my water quick and I'll do it back. Does anybody have any questions? This is 300-pound Fabriano cold press.
Okay, we have a question in chat. I couldn't understand the name of the cool red you used in the shadows.
Anthraquinone red. It's a really long chemical name. ANTHRAQUINOID. Anthraquinone red. And this is the brand I have is Daniel Smith. Let's see. You know what? I think maybe I'll do this one right here because I don't think it'll cause any problems. So, and by problems, I mean like bleeding, or I don't want it to bleed. This is kind of supposed to be bleeding together anyway. So, well, I'm just going to do the shadow part and I'll come back to do this one. So, I want the red, then some of my more red. So with the cool red in my darkest parts of the shadow. And this is the cool red, the pearly red. Switch back to the cool red here. Just let them mix together. Got some of these little spots that I missed earlier.
Another question, do you take opacity or transparency of the paints into consideration when choosing what colors to use?
Yes. So I used to think that I painted only with transparent paints, but then when I found these different reds, I don't use any cadmium colors because I find that their opacity ends up making mud for me. But these reds, like the heroin red and like this orange, pyro orange, they do have opacity. But it doesn't seem to be causing mud the way I've worked it out. I think more of like the color temperature, like I've been talking about warm red and cool red, and they seem to, it all seems to be okay. Like I don't use ultramarine blue in my beads because of that same opacity problem making mud for me. Like when I first was learning to paint, I took a class from Jim Torvalds, like was mentioned in the bio. And you know, when you start with a teacher, you get the paints that the teacher recommends. And it took me a long time to figure out that I didn't need to stick with those. If they weren't working for me, it's okay to throw them out of your palette and get the ones that are good for your painting. So I was really lucky. One time I had entered a painting in a show, one of the Northwest Watercolor shows, and I got an award, and my award was the entire set of Daniel Smith watercolors. And it was like 230 something tubes of paint. And Stephanie Getzler, who's a member of this group, is one of my good friends, and another watercolor painter friend came over and we laid them out over my whole living room floor and put them in, you know, because they weren't in any kind of order. It was like the most fun. But I never would have been able to try or go, you know, that was an opportunity to try so many different colors that I never would have. So hopefully, if you are interested in painting with these kind of colors and watercolor, this will help you too. Because, yeah, I learned a lot by having the opportunity to experiment. So I see in this little section right here, this is, let's see, I think I'm going to use magenta for this. But I'm going to take some of the quinacridone pink. I think I'll use a different well. Quinacridone pink and some of my magenta mix because I think my magenta's a little too purple. So I'm going to, so I can change it a little. These veins. I want these to dry before I paint this in. So, because I want to soften some of the edges first. So that's one of the things I want these I consider shadows. These are shadows of the ruffles in the flower. So I want to paint them in first, then come back and soften them.
How closely do you adhere to your reference photo?
Oh, I very, as much as I can. I'm not very good at painting things out of my head. So yeah, I depend on good reference photos. I encourage everybody to take your own photos. Don't take them, paint things out of magazines. That's how I started, and just because I didn't know how to take a good reference. So, but I don't have the same sense of pride in those paintings, and I can't sell them, or, it's not originals. Yeah, it's not original. So
what does make a good reference photo?
well, I try to take my photos in the morning or late afternoon with side shadows. I don't do really well with any overcast. I depend on shadows, and because it changes it gives drama.
Yes.
Yeah. So, yeah, those two things help a lot. It took a long time to figure out with photos. I remember buying a bunch of lemons and a really cool blue and white striped dish towel, and I took so many photos, but that was back also when it was a film, so you go get them developed, you come back, and there was nothing to them. And you could see right away, it took, I guess it's probably a good idea to take a photography class or something before you try to do photos, but I never did that, so it's a lot of. But still, I'll set up still lifes, and you might get 2 good photos out of 100 that you take. So it's just a lot of it's luck, I think. The one that makes your heart sing. Okay, so I'm gonna switch over. Let's see. Does anybody have any preference? Well, how much time do we have? We have a whole nother hour and 5 minutes. Okay. I'd like to get to the point where I can peel this mask off and do some of the center. So I think I'll concentrate on some of these things around the center so that I can do that. Okay. So let's see. I haven't done this. So I'll do these darks first. So I'll start with the anthropomorphic red. Let's see. Yes, I have masking fluid. This is all of this pollen. This is the pollen stamen. It's pointing straight out at us. So part of this project is that there's a shadow from the stamen over here. So I haven't really. I'll try to get to that. So for this, I probably have to make this petal darker before I start putting these darks in, because if I do this dark pink area, dark red, and then come in with a lighter wash here, it'll bleed. So, with watercolor, you always have to think of what order you're doing things, because they will affect what happens down the road. So, get this area in. Maybe I'll do this next so that I can maybe do this in that class or done. So again, I'm just painting with anthraquinoid red, and then I'm going to switch to the warm red right over there. This is still anthraquinoid over my shadow. Now the warm red, let's see, right there. And the drawing, you can see its shapes. This is another petal. Sometimes I wet the paper first, and sometimes I don't. Usually I'll wet the paper first if I'm doing something and I want it to be really smooth. And I need more time to get the paint to maneuver to be smooth. Okay, this is the bright rose. switch to magenta. Which one's that? Not that one. My brushes are all confused now. So there's a little like a rough seam, or like the edge of the petal here is lighter, so making sure not to paint over that. See, I think I need more of that pyrrole red in here. Let's see, maybe I'm gonna dip into the pyrrole orange. That's really bright. That'll brighten it up in here a lot. I don't know if you've used pyrrole orange before, but love this pigment. It just really stands out to even mixing it with indigo. I remember doing a painting with koi, so there was dark blue, indigo, and then mixing with the pyrrole orange, just make beautiful, just make blood, just beautiful colors. So let's see. Organize for a second. Which brushes have what? Okay, so I'm using the anthracite red now over this piece in shadow. And then it changes to more of a warm red, so I'm switching to the pyrrole, what is it, fairly red. And I'm gonna let that dry. There's a pretty hard edge right here, so I don't want to start in on that. But this one, let's see, a warm red around the edge, and then I see more of a blue violet or blue magenta. Stop that right here so I don't have to start painting that edges. These shapes. And then we want that magenta color. So doing the underpainting just really makes my life a lot easier when I get to this fun local colors. Okay, so this is where I start getting into the shadows. So first I've got to do this light. So I'm gonna go hair dry this for a minute. So while I was hair drying it, I was looking back at this petal, not loving how purple that's showing up. So I think I'm gonna have to make this area more intensely pink, so this doesn't, so there's not so much contrast between right along this edge. So, that'll give me more time to something that dry. This. So I'm gonna take out some more quinacridone paint. So quinacridone paint is a lot like quinacridone rose. It's just a real, it's more intense. I can talk like on snow. Yeah.
Have you ever used a golden, I think it's called core?
Yes. Yeah, they're, you know, the tubes look small, but the paint's really intense inside, so it's not really small. They're really good. Check on the side here. Oh, that's gonna be, if I use this, it's going to be very much what I'm trying to get over here. So I'm gonna have to wet this. Oops. I was gonna have to put some pink over, going to have to put some pink over here anyway, so. So the areas I want to wet are the areas I don't want to change the values. Like I'm okay with the edge. Except this area, I do have to put some pink over here. See, there's a lot of paint here. And I don't want to have my brush, but I do want to have it blend, so I'm just going to very lightly, hopefully not cause problems. Some clear water there. So this is my clear water brush, but it just, you know, I touched into the pink, so dragged it. Put some more of the bright Caroline red, because I see this reflected light. I'm just trying to lift a little bit away so it blends. I like this better so far. I can get a little texture and having some blossoms. I'm afraid I'm gonna end up with a line right here, so. A little more clear water. Whenever you give a stopping point, paint goes there, and leaves a line, so. I'm just trying to touch it so gently. It's tapping and dropping water down. And my intention is to get a bolt of room paint to move. Let's see. This was the spot I hair dried. Okay. So up here, now that this is dry, I can soften some of these a little bit. Oops, keep dripping. So I don't need to soften this a lot, but since it's not like super in focus in my reference photo along there, it's nice to let the paint blend a little better. Okay, so this is, I see some connected on pink, and then bright red, iron red. And so it's shadow too. And then this is where my stamen work starts. So the shadows in the stamens. So see, bright red here. So it seems like it switches between quinacridone pink and the pyro red. And just along here, I think I'll put some of the cool red that's a little darker so that it stands out from this below. This one. Oh, I was supposed to do the pink. Okay, I have to stop. I forgot I was supposed to do pink there. So I'm gonna wipe that off. I have to do my pink wash. Does anybody have any questions? Okay, so this is a light pink wash. I'm just gonna put this in here. Don't have to be very careful around this stuff because I'm going to put such dark paint over it. But even if there's a line where I start and stop, I don't think it will show. Yeah. Try to get a little value change so that that puddle's not so flat. Maybe it'll make some blossoms. It's not, maybe this pink is too light to have blossoms, but I don't want it to be super uniform. Okay, so I'll have to come back to that, to this area. It looks like I could take, if I get this dry, I could take this masking fluid off, but there's still a lot of time, so I'll work on this petal right here. Is anybody interested in the leaf part of it? I mean, there's not a lot of really defined. Okay. Okay, yeah, the back of it. So if I can get this section done where the petals are done enough, then I could put the darks in the background. And get my photos turned in the right direction. All right, so I'm going to use the cracker from the pink here, just on the dry paper.
Kathleen, did you want to take a break at all, or
No,
you okay going ahead?
yeah, I can
Okay,
keep going. If I
Good.
Get to the leaves.
great.
So I'm leaving some of the white paper still. I'm kind of coming, overlapping. Hopefully this doesn't leave a big outline, because I don't really want that, but I guess I can try to wet and bring it up so that I don't have that kind of overlap outline. I just don't want to wake that paint up too much. Okay, so now that I have these, I'm going to use the scrubber right away. Let's see. Clear water down and scrub it into these and left. I have some that are a little harder, you can scrub into them. When I look at the reference photo, it's a bit soft. You can see, yeah.
Mhm.
And it's actually called a scrubber?
No, this brush is called Catalyst by Princeton. And it's a round, this one is a size 8, these size 8s, because you can fit into these little, like narrower spots. I have bigger ones too, but I like this size. But if you do order one online, make sure they come in a long handle, size 8 too. And so by mistake before I ordered, and they come this long, so I have a bunch with ends that are snapped off. Right. Because they don't fit in my carrier. So I'm gonna keep, you know, trying to get texture and ridges on this petal. A really light spot over here. So that I think I might just dry that with a tissue. I use this flat 1/2-inch brush. Okay. A little more definition in these places I'm trying to lift. This might work better if I let the paper dry. But I think for now that's fine, and I can lift more later if I want to. this petal, I've lost quite a bit of my lighter space, so.
Oh, you need to put your, oh, do have it on.
Yeah, I want to try to get a little bit more of the white space back along this edge. So I think I'll use the scrubber again. Maybe, is it still, oh, it's still really wet, so maybe instead of that, I'll just drop it in some water. See if I can get the paint to flow away. It's kind of hard with these pinks. They're pretty staining. Maybe if I brush at it a little, it'll loosen up. And it's okay if it doesn't turn out as light. I can always come back in and scrub it with, sometimes I'll take, if I have to like lift paint more significantly, you know, I'll use this drafting tape and protect the areas that I don't want to mess with. And then use a Mr. Clean Magic Eraser to, you know, get it even whiter.
That's why you're using 300-pound paper.
Well, because I'm lazy. I don't want to stretch paper. No, when I started to be able to afford 300-pound paper, then I used 300-pound paper because I remember. Oh, plus it gets so wavy. You get all those hills and valleys and the paint settles and this does somewhat also, but not as bad, of course. Let's see. Okay, so I was trying to get this done enough that I could do some background. So I'm going to go use the hairdryer for a few minutes and then be right back. Okay, so I'm going to take the masking fluid off of the center of the flower because everything touching the center is done. So I use this rubber cement pickup. Oh, and the masking fluid I used was Incredible White Mask Liquid Frisket. And I used to use those applicators that always got clogged. So recently I just go to Ross and buy those cheap little packs of brushes that you use it one time and then you don't feel bad throwing it away.
That's just an eraser.
This is it's a rubber block, like the soles of those rubber shoes. Well, you could look at it after. You can buy them at art supply stores. unfortunately, it looks like it's pulling up all the drawing with it. I drew, oh no, some of it's still there. So instead of using this the whole time, because I was erasing my drawing, I'm just gonna try to peel it. It's very fun to peel this stuff off. It's rubber. Like a liquefied rubber. When you put it on and then it dries into rubber. I like this kind of frisket because it doesn't have a dye in it. Like some of them have blue or yellow dye and then it seems to leave that color on the paper. This,
Just drafting.
yeah, that too. That's also, do you see people, they tape off their painting with blue painter, like blue house painters tape? Yeah, it's really confusing to me. I have tape, drafting tape on the edge and this is drafting tape, yeah.
Yeah, because I also have, an issue with the colors of those things.
So I'm just scraping off, like there's a little ridge, where the paint built up. So I want to make sure I don't have that, because that'll like really bleed into my pollen. All right, let's see. I didn't take out any yellows. All right, so for this inside the pollen stamen area, there is a side of it that is in shadow. And that, do I have the photo going the right way? Let's see. Nope. This one goes this way. Okay. So this side right here is in shadow. So I have a technique for painting shadows when it's in yellow, and that's to put Winsor violet under those shadows or under where the yellow will be. So I don't want it to be a dark value. So I would say like a 20 to 30, maybe 25% value of Winsor violet. And I've got wet paint right here, so I've got to be careful where I set my hand. But I see the shadow over here. And so I'm using a small brush for this. Oh, I should have, okay. Before I do more, I want to make my drawing a little more visible because I can see that it's disappearing under this purple paint. I made an extra effort to go over all this pollen stuff before I put the masking fluid on, because I knew I would lose some when I peeled off the mask. I don't have to do all of it, but I do need to do the areas where I'm putting the shadow. So I have 2 workshops coming up if anybody's interested. One of them is a Zoom workshop, May 17th, 18th, and 19th, and it's going to be on red heliconia flowers. And I have
a live workshop at the Gualala Arts Center up near where I live. And that's the end of June, June 28th to 30th, I think. And that one is on plumeria flowers, really bright, colorful plumeria flowers. And I haven't taught in 2 years, so I'm happy to start doing it again.
For drawing, do you use just a regular pencil?
I use a 3B. So it's a little darker. So when I do my drawing, some of you have taken classes from me. I trace, I make an outline image in the computer of my reference photo, turn it to the mirror image, trace, and then take that side with the graphite, flip it over onto the watercolor paper, and then I scribble over with a colored pencil to press the graphite onto the watercolor paper. So it's a big time saver, and that's how I do my drawings for watercolor. Trying to see how far up to put the shadow. It looks like it comes all the way up here. I think that's, no, there's more.
So for your larger paintings, you must have to blow them up quite a bit.
Yeah.
And then have them printed out. Or you have a printer.
I do. I have a wide format printer, so I can use that when I have something big. Okay, I think that's good enough for my underpainting there. So I'm going to take out some quinacridone gold and some new gamboge to start. I don't have a lot of empty spaces on my palette, so I think I'll just put them. I just won't mix up a ton of it. I don't need a lot. I like to have my paints juicy. Like you can see, I like to have the brushes loaded, and I don't like to paint with dry little lumps of paint. Oops, all my water's dirty.
Cover it and then rewrite it.
Well, you know what I usually do is stack them. So I have, a lot of these, so I'll stack them, and that seems to stay nice and wet. Just the one on top dries up, or just don't use that one, it's an extra. Okay, so I'm gonna so over all the pollen stuff that's in shadow, I'm gonna put quinacridone gold over my Winsor violet. So I want to be a little more careful when I get to some of these. So when I want to get a really tight spot, I'm using a smaller brush now, but if I wipe it on my cloth, then I can get a real fine point. I don't have as good of dexterity as I used to have. I had some vertebrae fused or 2 vertebrae in my neck fused a couple years ago. So, and I still have nerve problems in my hand. So now I'm a loose painter. I'm really not a loose painter. I just have to try harder than I used to. So now this is new gamboge. So I'm looking at all the pollen that is really bright. And I've got the big red ball parts of the pollen, stamen, I don't know. So I'll paint around those. And then I'll come in between some of the pollen that's yellow and add the darks. I have some little crumbs of the dark reds in there, and they're kind of melting into my bright new gamboge. So does anybody have any questions? So some of these spots I'm going to come back in and fill in with, like this area right here. I'll come back in with some of these dark reds and make them a little more filled in or something like that. So this is going to be red or like a red orange. Okay, I need to make sure I don't paint over the red stuff. Okay, I think I will stop with the gamboge for the moment and come back and get these dark red areas taken care of, so then I'll know what I have left. So when I look at my reference photo for the really big red pollen balls, I see like an orangish halo around a darker red dot. So that's what I'm going to try to paint. Sometimes when I've done these hibiscus, it'll look like there's a white halo around the bigger dot, red dot things. But in this one, I see more of an orange. So that's what I'm going to use. I don't want it to bleed into my new gamboge though, so. But this one I can start. It's bleeding a little, still wet. Normally I'd set my hand down on here, but it's wet. Yeah, I can see this area is in the orange. This is pyrrole orange. I don't want to touch that new gamboge yet because it's still wet. Let's get kind of close to it. And this one, I see it's got a thinner neck, like this little stem to it. See the orange. I probably should have made my photo bigger. I used to paint from like 4x6 photos, and as I've like gotten older, my pictures, I usually paint on an 8x10 sheet of, I think I was short on photo paper, so I had to split this between two different projects. Okay, I'm gonna let that dry and then come back and work on that some more. So inside this new Gambo, or this is the quinacridone gold section. Let me look at my photo more carefully. Okay, I see some of that orange in here. I think it's like reflected. Maybe. Putting a little more of the quinacridone gold in here. It looks a little bit on the dull side. I'm going to let that run together with some new gamboge here. Okay. All right, so how much time? Okay, I'm going to do some of the green in this yes. But this is a real easy section because it's almost solid darks. So I'll do some of this and then there's some little green spots and stuff. So, all right. So what I use for my greens, it's almost like I have a formula. So for greens, I use Prussian green and sometimes phthalo blue if it's a light underpainting. So this, I'm talking about the underpainting colors. A light, like light veins in a leaf would be a phthalo blue. If they're like a mid-value veins or shadows, I use Prussian green. If they're dark, I'll use indigo. Okay, and then for my overpainting, I use mainly like green gold and sap green. And it kind of seems, and then sometimes you can mix burnt sienna with the sap green if you need to make it a different type of green. But anyway, it all seems to be really effective for greenery. And sometimes I have to use cobalt, if it's like a dusty soft blue, I'll use cobalt blue and Aurelian mixed together. So, you know, you look and you have to adjust for what you see in your reference photo. This reference photo, I've got a lot of really dark stuff. There's something yellowy back here. So I think I would probably drop in some quinacridone gold in this area or some burnt sienna. Here, I've got the really dark color. So, oh, I used to use perylene green or shadow green if it was Holbein, but lately I've been mixing Winsor violets indigo with green gold. And it gives a really beautiful jewel toned dark green. If I want it to be a blacker dark green, I'll mix Daniel Smith's indigo with green gold. So each and there's a new a new watercolor brand is Michael Harding, and they have an indigo that's really, really black. So way less jewel toned. So, you know, it depends what your project is. You can use all of them, you know, just you have choices. But it's funny how each company's greens can be so different. Greens are, no, I mean indigos. Their indigos can be so different. Okay, I'm gonna go get some fresh water and I'll be right back. Michael Harding. They're known for oil paints and they just started making watercolors. Okay, bye. So good to see you. Okay, so for this, I have some indigo mixed up, and I'm going to take my dropper. So I use these droppers to move paint around in my palette. So I already mixed up the green gold, and I'm gonna just put it in and get that stirred up. So you can change how dark it is by how, what proportion of each one you use. So I'm gonna put in the darkest dark here. Let's see. Oh, well, I would like to paint that a little darker, so I'll leave a little space and then I can fill in, because this is so dark. If you come back and fill in a little area, it'll cover where you did it. And same with this. I didn't get this piece of petal done. So I'll leave a little gap and then I can come back to it. So I see that I have this drawn. There's like the edge of a leaf. It's blurry, but I'll paint around these little like noodle shapes.
Which two colors were those?
This is indigo and green gold.
Indigo.
And it is super blue right now. But I can also dip into the green gold and like let it mix on the paper so I have some more variety. You can see there's a little bit of a drawing here of another leaf. So I just dipped into the darker stuff again. Bring that all the way down. Okay. Okay, so I'm gonna, got the edge of a leaf right here. So yeah, so I'm trying to keep one leading edge and keep moving. And I picked a spot here where it doesn't really matter. It's gonna, if I join up with this again later, it's so dark, it's gonna be hidden where the two seams meet. But sometimes it's more critical when you decide where you want to have your, where you want to start and stop. So I do need to paint this edge a little more. So I'm leaving a little air gap so that the indigo doesn't bleed into it later.
Is that still the wind violet and green gold?
Yes. All right, so now I'm getting to a place where I'm going to come up closer to the flower and I see some other colors happening. So I'm going to
Flower entirely before you do the background?
I usually do, yeah. I always do. Okay, so I'm going to stop this dark in a second. Oh, I want to recommend a book. If any of you listen to books while you paint, I have this favorite book right now. It's called All the Beauty in the World. Has anybody heard of that? No. It's it's written by a guy who worked at the Metropolitan Museum of Art for 10 years as a guard. And he had lost his, well, I don't want to tell you the whole story, but it's wonderful. And he talks about the art. And now he gives tours of the museum. And I would love to go have a tour from him because it's amazing to listen to him talk about the artwork. I should remember that. Oh, okay, I'll look at it. All the Beauty in the World. Patrick Bringley. Patrick Bringley. Bingley or Bringley?
Okay.
So he had worked, okay. He had worked for the New Yorker magazine, and his brother died of cancer young. And he was so distraught. He just wanted to go be around beautiful things and not have to talk to anybody. So he went to work there and healed. And, you know, it's such a beautiful, beautiful story. Okay, so this is still pretty wet. Everything's still wet. So you can see I put in the darks. I did drop in a little green gold here just to break it up, but when this dries, I will come in and soften the edges here and then put in the other colors that are in here. And the reason I do it this way is that I can keep control. I don't lose these shapes. If I did it while it was wet, they would close up. So once the background is in, the flower really starts to come together. Okay, the stamen, did it dry enough? I'm gonna turn it. Well, we have 10 minutes more. Does anybody have any questions yeah,
I'm concerned about getting all the way around and meeting up with that dry edge in the background.
right here.
How do you attach to
Um,
that?
Well, it's so dark that I would just keep going till maybe I got to here and it will, yeah, and maybe just even soften this edge so that it's not as obvious when things merge. Yeah, no, just soften with like this. That's the good thing about painting with such dark colors. They hide the seam. It hides its own seams. So, yeah. And yeah, it's not a weird thing. Do you want me to do it? Because it's kind of dry over there. Right here? Is it showing? Oh, I see. Sideways. Oh, it's still pretty wet right there. That's okay. So there's just more dark, so. see some shapes here. That'll be my new line. And I'm just lucky that's all still wet, but
You made it look easy.
so I'll just keep bringing this over. All this is dark. I don't want to get close because I still have to paint all that. There's a lot of like odd zigzaggy things, and I think when painting like background stuff like this, the more abstract it is, the better. Less realistic, like leaf shapes.
Also, it would detract less from the flower then.
Well, it just looks less fake. You want, nature is random, right? And I mean, there are patterns and stuff, and I do paint like leaf patterns, but I see a real zigzaggy shape. I'm trying to spot where it is in my photo. I'm not in the right spot. Oh, it's this way. Nope.
Thinking of John Singer Sargent, he often ignored the background.
Okay, now I have the photo going the right way. So I'm going to stay away from this a little bit. I also want to use up the paint in my palette before I try to get it back to my car, so. So I see a shape in here that's, I'm not sure if I have it in the right spot, but.
When you put those shapes in after this is dry, how do you, how does it, combine with the background?
So I'll take this scrubbing brush and come in and soften the edges, and then I just softly, gently drop in the color in those. Like you can see can you see in the camera, this line? So, and then there's the edge of a leaf over here. I'll leave a lighter spot and then some darker. So just hints of things. And it might be good right now to drop in a little of the green gold so that it kind of goes with some of the other places. You see this big leaf. This is nice because you don't have to be very careful. I think I'd like to put in some burnt sienna, but I think it's kind of dried up, and yeah, maybe this is sap green and burnt sienna. I'm not sure. So I'm doing it now, and then I don't have to soften it later. That one closed up. The green gold pushes other colors away, so that's a nice one for this. How do I get it in the right place? I'm trying to, there we go. I'm looking at your screen and trying to figure it out. So hopefully that helps with your pinks and reds. I don't think I can do any more right now.
They only have a couple minutes, so.
Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kathleen.
Oh, you're
Great
welcome.
demo.
Great.
Can't wait to see the finished product.
Yeah, I'll send you a picture.
Thank you.
Thanks for inviting me. You gave me a goal.